Hey guys, Wolvie here. This is RWBY Volume 8 Revisited for the channel now. I was trying to do another take, but I kind of remember, oh wait a minute, I had to look up one of my older videos because it does pertain to this video in its own way. So I had to, find the video, watch a little bit of it, put it on mute and just get the screen caps of what I needed, exactly that sort of thing. So with that bit out of the way, that's going to be part of this video. It's going to be part of certain areas, so stay tuned for it when I bring it up. Alongside of that, it's going to be the usual, when it comes to the recent volumes, revisiting them sort of thing. It's going to be likes, dislikes, surprises, overall thoughts, that sort of thing. With the overall thoughts, it's going to be my personal score alongside the intended fan score, so don't fret, folks. So with that bit out of the way, what I'm going to do is I'm going to be, let me grab my notes here. So I'm going to go over some likes, all that sort of thing, that pertains to this video. So with that bit out of the way, the usual disclaimer applies. Any opinion in this video is my opinion and my opinion only. So I'm going to be pausing this video because I do need to go, because I'm doing all this for my cell phone, so that way, hey, it is what it is. So with that, you might be hearing something in the background. I think that's something pertaining to the apartment, so please bear with it as well as me. So anything else, I'm not in my contacts yet. I got up not so long ago, so I just want to make sure I get this video at least filmed for anything else. So that's that on that. So I'm going to be pausing this video. I'm going to go into my photo album because I got screen caps and those sort of things, that sort of stuff. So I'll be back. This right here, the winner made a power transfer from Penny to Winter. This is perhaps my absolute favorite. It came at the very end. And now that I'm thinking about it, when it came down to that Volume 7 intro where, just Penny was like, I was like that, she had a smile on her face. It's like, okay, something big is going to happen involving her. I just didn't know what else it entailed at that time. But I'm glad it's a reason why. There's a reason why certain things are happening. And with that, it's just like, I'm glad, Winter got the winner made of powers. And the decision Penny made, for her to hold on, to get to buy winter time in the sense of like the winner made of powers itself. I'm glad, Penny did the right thing, made sure that Cinder did not get her hands on it at all. Even if it meant Penny dying at the end of the Volume 8, I was bawling like a baby. I really can't describe this scene without crying, because it's just like it's the overall execution of this. It's like Penny made the decision to protect Winter. Granted, she managed to get the winner made of powers at the end of Volume 7, and that is Sandy. Let's see if you can see him. There he is. He says hi. So basically, the whole Penny's decision making in this volume is not so much that, but it's more so Penny in the sense of like giving Winter the winner made of powers. It's like, man, she is protecting human life. It's being the heart of what a maiden really is. So I particularly enjoyed the scene the most, although, like I say, it came at the very end. And the whole development on Penny, I'll get to that a little bit later. So I'm like, yeah. So speaking of Winter, she is MVP number 1. Now, the reason why Winter is MVP number 1 is because the overall development of her in the entire volume is just like, she went from I had a feeling she was questioning Ironwood since Volume 7, because you have to remember, Volume 7, Weiss and Winter had a discussion, and within the discussion, Ironwood was actually a topic of that discussion, meaning that Winter was in fact questioning Ironwood since the last volume. And there are some people who are mentioning, you know, the whole grooming aspect, all that jazz. And the thing is, when it comes to like grooming somebody, it's just like it doesn't have to be a certain way. It could be like how you develop them in their line of work. And this is pretty much the whole case with Winter, you know, like as far as we know, because you see here in Volume 8, you know, she's really starting to questioning things. Her letting Yang, Jean, and Ren go to get Oscar. It's like Winter is like really questioning things. And then you have to really think about it. I do, like I said, I feel that she's been questioning Ironwood since at least Volume 7, maybe longer. But it's something that we don't know about the before Volume 7, because Volume 7 is when she came back. And the whole thing with Ren, you know, that particular part where Ren was like noticing, was able to get her, the read he got with Winter is that her emotions were all over the place. It's like you couldn't really see, you really couldn't get a good read on her because her emotions were all over the place. It's just that, but the fact that Winter made the decision to let Yang, Jean, and Ren go, I mean, it shows that Winter is really for the people. Because you have to remember, back at the end of Volume 6, Marie, that was it. It's Cordova, I think the woman's name was, like, the one that Maria really doesn't like. Is that, the whole thing with, like, that's just, like, Cordovan, I think it is. It's just, like, you know, you gotta be for the people. Really for the people. And it's something that Winter is really starting to embody. Yo, to be for the people. Don't be all me. Because if you're, like, ruling over other people, you gotta, you know, think about them too. And I'm glad to see Winter, you know, becoming her own person. I mean, I do feel Weiss, you know, is starting to becoming a bigger influence on some of the people in Alice that we think. And the whole thing with her and Meryl is just like, yep. I am feeling we're going to have so many people turn their backs on Ironwood Volume 9, it's like not even funny. Now, the other MVP for the volume is Jean. Because the thing is with Jean is it's like his overall decision making, as well as like, you know, having a sound head on the shoulders, it's like, wow. It's like really, that's something I really like. For the MVPs for Volume 8, it's going to be Winter as well as Jean Arc. Because it's like, Winter is questioning a lot of stuff. And like I said in Volume 7, I felt that Winter and Weiss, that discussion they had with Ironwood being one of the topics, is that, believe it or not, Winter's been questioning Ironwood for some time. And it just had to come to Volume 8 for Winter to really open her eyes. And really stopping, and the thing is, like, with Winter, she just can't trust Ironwood anymore. So, with that, I'm going to pause this video real quick so that way, you know, hey, we can get to other things. I am back, so, like I said, that's just, like, some particular, like, so, to do a quick recap of this particular section, Winter and Jean are the two MVPs for Volume 8, because for Jean, it's like, you know, his decision making is at another level. The fact he is so level-headed, the fact that he was actually forced to kill Penny, is just like, damn. So that's that on that. And now Winter, you know, being the other MVP, because like I said in Volume 7, you know, she had her own thoughts on Ironwood. And I think she's been questioning Ironwood for some time. And in fact, you have somebody like Winter, you know, questioning things, you know, in secret, then eventually comes out in the open. It's like, yep, I knew, and that's something I knew what was coming. Because, you know, it's like, there's certain things that are going on behind the scenes, you just don't know really what it is until you see it for yourself. And then the whole thing with the beginning of Volume 8, you know, where it's like Winter sees somebody being gunned down by Ironwood unprovoked. It's like, yeah, something else is going on. It's not good. Now, the whole thing with the Ironwood development, like I said, you know, him becoming a clear as day antagonist, the fact that he actually worked on Salem's side for a while with Watts, it's like, it's something that I personally saw coming, because you think about somebody like Ironwood's like, okay, it's like some stuff you don't see at first, but it becomes a little bit more clear as day. And, at one point in an earlier volume, Ironwood kind of wanted Weiss to be part of the Elysian military, although it was a bit more indirect in one case. But it's like, I'm glad, hey, Weiss is not part of that in the end for a good reason. Now, speaking of Weiss, the fact that she was being a strategist was not a bad call. It's something I kind of like, because it's like, you notice that she didn't have that many lines of, throughout the entire volume. And some people were not really liking it, but it's like, I think she might be up to something that we don't know. So I particularly enjoyed that. Now, the whole theme of, part of the stuff that's been going on for Volume 8, with Yang questioning RWBY's decision making, it's like, I'm sensing a bit of, distrust or whatever. Anyway, let me pause this video real quick, so I'll be back. Okay, so yeah, like I said, I am back, so I just had to, double check something real quick. So, Yang questioning things, I'm like, is this another split spill for the team at some point? So that kind of had me thinking here. I'm still thinking about that, the fact that I do see another potential split in Team RWBY. It's just a matter of when. But yeah, so the whole chat with Blake and RWBY, that was way overdue. I was hoping to see that in an earlier volume. It's like, you have here Yang questioning RWBY's decision making, where Blake is like, RWBY's trying. It's just like, you have to give it to somebody who is about close to 3 years, being 3 years younger than Blake. It's like, okay. So it's like, with that, it's like, yeah. And with RWBY, it's just like, RWBY's trying. It's like, you really can't expect her to know what to do. It's like, RWBY's like, making the effort, and that's very much what matters. So the whole ideology, with Blake, versus Yang's ideology, it's like, this is kind of like what I was saying all along. Yeah, I do see Bumblebee being canon, becoming canon, but I don't think it'll remain canon, because, and the thing is with RWBY, again, she is a catalyst in my opinion, it's like, that sort of thing. And again, the whole thing with Weiss, I do see her as being a reason. Now, with the Renora chat, I believe this is 8B. That chat, I'm glad they got that one out of the way. Because it's like, we do know that Renora still isn't canon, but we have the proof right there. Because it's like, Nora's like, I need the time to work on me. I need to figure out who I am. So I'm glad they got that chat in there. Which, in my opinion, if it's there in the writing saying, hey, I don't feel the same way. Or, in this case, I need time to figure out who I am. And, that sort of thing. I particularly like that conversation in that particular volume. Now, Klein's return, I'm surprised that that even happened, because I'm like, I remember back in Volume 7 where Whitley mentioned the whole thing with, say, hey, Klein was let go, that sort of thing. It's like, I'm surprised he came back the following volume. So I do particularly enjoy that, and I do feel we're going to see a bit more Klein in future volumes, that sort of thing. Now, the first half of Volume 8, that was quite well done, because it's like everything, that we had that was just so good. on an overall scale. Now, the whole thing with May Marigold, I mean, I particularly enjoyed the realism behind her. Realism behind the group, you know, this particular vibe. I just enjoyed May, you know, it's just like, you don't see much of it, but it's something I would like to see more of, that realism. Now, I'm looking at my notes here real quickly. Now, the whole thing with Whitley, you know, he's starting to change from, you know, becoming the a-hole to being, hey, there's more I can do. And I'm like, with him being influenced by Weiss and then Weiss being influenced by RWBY, it's like, you know what? We're starting to see that, you know, just because you're related to a certain individual, in the sense of like their last name, does not always mean that you're going to be like that person. And that's the whole thing with Whitley, in my opinion. Because it's like, Whitley, I'm starting to see him, you know, just because he has the same last name as Jacques, doesn't mean that he's like him in every sense of the word, sense of that. Because you can have the same surname as certain other people, but that's all that is. You just have the same surname. It doesn't mean that you embody the person's surname to the science. And by the science, personality traits. Now, one thing I particularly enjoyed a little bit more than the rest was that the point of view switch was consistent, because we do know that for Volume 8 only having a span time of 1 to 2 days, it's just like you actually had to, you know, do a lot of point of view switches. And that's pretty damn cool, you know, for it to be consistent in the entire volume. Now, with that bit out of the way, what are some of my dislikes? And mind you, my personal score, not the overall, not the intended score, but my personal score is factored in by the dislikes and the value of the dislikes. So with that, let me grab this so you guys don't see that. Besides that moment, so basically, so here's what I'm going to do for the dislikes. So I'm just going to be like going over what I have been noticing. Now, one of the dislikes I've been noticing, and this and some of the other bits of the dislikes, come down to one particular source. And that source is being none other than Twitter. And by what I've been noticing on Twitter, the fandom. Now, you're kind of wondering, okay, some people be like, okay, we have another potential hater, or somebody part of the hate-em, whatever. However, here's the thing what I've been noticing about the fandom. At certain points, let me see that. Now, here's the thing with the fandom. I've been noticing on Twitter in recent times where things got quite spicy in sense of things related to the show. Now, the thing here with the fandom and its relation to the show, it's like I've had to ignore so much of what's being said on Twitter in recent days to the point where it's a bunch of he said, she said. And I don't want to get myself dragged into this, because it's like, you know what? If it's over something that was being said, you gotta take it privately, because it's like, if you if anyone airs out dirty laundry, and by that, put something out that was meant in private over publicly on social media, it's pretty embarrassing on an overall scale. Now, there are people on both sides of the quote-unquote political spectrum in real life that do this sort of thing. And for me, it's just like, if I have quote-unquote dirty laundry on somebody, I'm going to do my absolute best not to air it out in public. Because for me, it's something I cannot forgive myself for. Now, Again, there's a bunch of he said, she said on certain things within the fandom in recent weeks. I'm like, come on. You guys got to sort this out privately. And that's the only thing I'm going to be saying on that. Because I don't want to have to, like, completely remove myself from the fandom over stuff on social media on another matter. Now, with that bit out of the way, there are issues from Volume 6 that actually has resurfaced in Volume 8. Now, some people are referring to Volume 8 as being the worst volume due to certain aspects of it, and by that, the execution of the writing. Now, when it comes down to the writing, it's just like, it depends on how keen of an eye one has on it. And the reason why it kind of comes down to that is because for those who have written prose creatively, and maybe even some fan fiction, some people can probably pinpoint, okay, that's not a good writing decision, or this was better, etc., etc. So the whole thing with Volume 6, how certain things felt rushed, in the eyes of some, it's like, yeah. And certain things, it's just like, the execution of the writing is just like, yeah. I actually have to scratch my head on that one. Now, the Volume 8, Chapter 10 reunion scene is just like, there was a lot of debate on this one because some people felt it was this, the term I'm going to be using is called queer baiting. So some people felt there was a lot of queer baiting. Some people felt it wasn't. And then some people were like, more certain ship moments, all that stuff. It's like, come on. But again, that debate got kind of spicy. And for me, it's like, I really don't know what to say about it, whether or not it being queer baiting. I mean, it's just one of those things. It's like, it's just a simple reunion. We don't know anything else besides, the whole thing where, like, the forehead thing with Blake and Yang, and with Weiss's hug with Yang not being sincere. And like I said, the whole thing with Weiss, I do feel she's going to be splitting from the team, and Weiss being a reason Bumblebee will not remain canon, because it's like, RWBY's probably not going to take it too well. It's going to be forcing people's hands. So for me, it's like, if I were to answer the question, was it queer baiting? No. That's my personal opinion on it. It's not. But it's going to be that whole thing with the hugs, you see the 3 different types. I do feel it's going to be a reason why Team RWBY splits up again, because it's like, Weiss might be saying, I need to stay behind, or something along those lines. RWBY's not going to take it too well because, the whole definition of family. And it's going to be forcing Blake and Yang's hands. Because it's like, certain things can't be done without the entire team around. But sometimes you have to think about what a definition of family is. Are they all like this, like stuck together to each other's hips, like every aspect? It's something you have to ask yourselves. Now, for Volume 8, I kind of wrote this down. It kind of goes into certain other things. Now, regarding the writing, it tended to be a bit all over the place again, which is one of those issues that came along in Volume 7, as well as parts of Volume 6. It's like, certain aspects of the plot were all over the place. Again, I write fan fiction, although the thing I mainly write for is the Final Fantasy 13 trilogy. The thing I do is Final Fantasy 4, Final Fantasy 6. So, I noticed that some of the writing in Volume 8 tended to be all over the place, which was a repeat of Volume 7 and an aspect of Volume 6. So it's like, yeah. I did feel some inconsistencies there. Now, the extended break, I mean, granted, I actually enjoyed that decision making, but wasn't really the right call. Because if you look at Volume 8A and 8B, meaning that 8A is the first half of the volume, 8B being the second half of the volume, it's like, Was it really the right call to make it because you have to look at the overall quality? Because the overall quality in Volume 8A was leagues better than 8B. And that alone says something. Now, with the whole thing with being more action-oriented than like dialogue-based, the whole thing of that balance, that's another thing that came out in Volume 6, where it's like, if you have too much of one thing but not enough of the other, it's just like, yeah. But this is something I'm willing to forgive the show for, due to the time span of it being 1 to 2 days in total. Now, the Volume 8, Chapter 14 interaction between Vi, Elm, and Harry, I'm starting to question that one a little, because it's like, I'm trying to make heads and tails on it on the overall scale. Now, the time frame of Sailor's return in the second half of Volume 8, I was kind of questioning it, like, ever since I saw it. I'm like, yeah. I have to question that a little bit. Now, I'm actually looking at my notes here so that way I can get certain things out of the way. Because, again, the whole thing with the extended break, just to do a bit of a recap. So you have the extended break that went from December to February. And then another one for Chapter 10. So it's like, was it really, like, a good idea? I mean, granted, it was, like, the best decision overall. But you have to see it brought out the ugliness within the fandom. And that is something that concerns me more than anything. So with that, we're going to go into the surprises and some potential character deaths. So one of the character deaths is more than likely Hazel, because granted, we haven't seen the body. But we don't see him ever since that incident in Volume 8B. So he comes down to as a potential death. And is a more than likely. Now, Penny, she is a dual death, meaning that the death in her robotic form, and then the death of her as a human. Now, with Penny, like I said, she is a surprise at her having a double death. And I'm like, wow, they really decided to go like hard on that. Now, Vine, he is a confirmed death. That is a 100% confirmation, because it's like, you actually see it happen. Now, with Jacques, I say he's a dead man, because of Ironwood. Now, with Watts, it's just like, I do feel he's going to be a death here. Even though he is a question mark in my notes, I do feel he is going to be a death, because he was like, he couldn't get out of he's probably not going to be able to get out of the building in time. And that's set on that. Ironwood, if he's not dead in Volume 8, he's a dead man in Volume 9. Now, with Cinder. Now, I really didn't know what to put her, but she's a surprise in the sense of like, I have to question it a little bit, but I think her character development is going to be akin to Kefka from Final Fantasy VI, because with Kefka, it's like craving that power, going crazy, that sort of thing. That's kind of Cinder's MO nowadays. So I'm a little surprised about that. Now, I did touch on Penny's double death, meaning that her robotic form died in one of the earlier, I think it was Volume 8, Chapter 12. Then she died again in her human form in Volume 8, Chapter 14. So I'm like, wow. That was a bit of a surprise, but a part of me felt it was coming. Now, regarding the chat Yang and Ruby had about Summer, I mean, granted, it's just like, I kind of did not see that coming. And now we're going to go into the screen caps from an earlier video of mine. So we're going to be revisiting that. So I'll be back. Now, these are the screen caps that I was able to find from the Volume 8 Predictions Part 3. So I remember having these around, but it's just, I'm like, okay, let me figure out where they are. So we have all this stuff here. So how much of this actually came true. So we're going to go into all this. So we do know that Weiss actually didn't have much to say the entire volume. Meaning that that's something else. Like I said, I do feel Weiss is going to be the one that splits for the team. RWBY's not going to take it too well. And again, I feel this is going to be the thing that forces Blake in Yang's hand. For varying reasons. Now, the longest volume, it says it takes over place 2 days tops. Volume 9 will be shorter. Now, we don't know the whole duration of Volume 9, but we do know that Volume 9, according to Miles, is that it's going to try something different. Now, the different I feel is that it's going to be based on that post-credit scene in Volume 8, alongside what happened in Volume 8, Chapter 14. Now, I don't think we're going to see any real Bumblebee moments, because you have to remember where people felt in the sense of like, in the overall sense, it's like that scene between Chapter 13 and Chapter 14, because we know that Yang was the first to fall. So we do know that Yang's going to be armed. She's going to be the one ready to go. Now, we do know that in the post-credit scene for Volume 8, that RWBY is going to be without her weapon. So that much we do know. Now, Blake will probably be without her weapon as well. Now, Weiss, she's more than likely going to be with her weapon. So that's just a little of what I think it's going to be. And a small preview of Volume 9 Predictions Part 1. So we do know that Weiss didn't have much, but it's like it's her actions that have more volume than words. So like I said, Weiss, we know that she didn't have a whole lot to say. Now the whole thing you see up here, and it's like we don't even see the F-bomb going off at all in Volume 8. So that's something we know didn't happen. We may see it on a Blu-ray DVD. Now, we do not also, and the thing is with Volume 9, with Volume 8 being the longest volume, I kind of have to disagree on that one in a certain respect. And the reason why I kind of have to disagree with that, that sort of thing there, is that for those of you who are familiar with Volume 1, we had 16 chapters. Now, the majority of the volumes in RWBY were like 12 chapters long. Then you have something like Volume 5, that was 14 chapters. Volume 6 and 7 is at 13 chapters apiece. So it's a little bit, got to correct somebody here. So we do know that Volume 1 was 16 chapters. You have Volumes 2, 3, and 4 being, I want to say, 12 chapters apiece. Volume 5, 14 chapters. Volume 6 and 7 were 13 chapters apiece. So you're talking about shorter. We just don't know how many chapters as of yet. If I had to take a guess, I wouldn't be surprised if it's going to be like a 12 chapter one. But, that's down that. Now, Marigold had a bigger role this season. That actually came out as correct. Now, according to Ren, not according to Ren. Now, you see here the whole thing with Ren and Nora. It's good that their biggest flaws came out. That came out. Now, the whole thing you see all the way up at the top here says, Barb said the theme of the volume is distrust for Yang and others. Just because you like or respect someone doesn't mean that you agree with everything they do or say. Now, this kind of whole thing was Yang was questioning RWBY. Now, the thing is, if you notice with Blake and Yang from Volume 7, they had that dialogue, which is like, Yang was like, we did what we had to do, but Blake was not really feeling it. And this is something, with Blake and Yang, They may sort that sort of issue out, but I feel there's going to be more to it in Volume 9. That sort of thing. Now, this is not a surprise, but the one at the top is the most accurate of everything so far. So, we see all this here, and then that's that. Now, this other part right here, I'm going to go into here. Let me grab that. Now, the screaming that supposedly was going on for Blake, I didn't see any of that. Because you see at Blake at chapter 13 where it's like, Blake only said Yang's name and it wasn't a scream. She's like, Yang! That's not a scream. And it's going to be like, ah! That sort of thing. But there was barely any screaming, and I don't know what to say. So this is why I say, anything you get off of Tumblr, and like I said, this is where I found the post initially. They just take anything you see on Tumblr with a grain of salt, because it could be as satire as it could get. So, the monologue, I don't know if I heard it or not. I may have been, not paying attention, but that's that on that. So, I think here with the part that really touched her heart, I do feel that's the RWBY and Blake conversation. It's just I think with Blake, it's just more she's actually, supporting RWBY in the sense of, you don't want as much violence as if you can avoid violence, do it. Avoid it. Come out with a more peaceful resolution. That sort of thing. And I feel that the whole thing, that for parts of Volume 8, it says of 8-8, we're also seeing how things are being viewed, with Blake, seeing things in a certain way, then Yang seeing things in another way. It's just we're seeing the flaws in the Bumblebee relationship as well in that regard, because it's Blake wants things to be a bit more peaceful. No violence. Then Yang's more violence is the answer. Which I feel, that's more we're going to be seeing a lot of disagreements within the Bumblebee, but that's just my personal opinion. Now let me see here. So, this is here. So the middle one, I am going to be saying this right now. And this might be referring to the reunion in chapter 10. But outside of that, I don't think any of that at all. So, this is just about being vague. So, this is pretty much all within the surprises, that sort of thing. So, some of the stuff that, surprised me in the volume, it comes down to Nero's actions. He's part of Aesop's with and without Winter. I'm holy smokes, this guy really is becoming his own person. And that is something I was surprised about in a good way. I'm wow, holy cow. So anyway, let me grab my notes here. So, the whole thing that really surprised me above all is that White was using Blake's weapon when fighting off against Cinder. I'm that's very unwise-like, but also wise at the same time. The reason why I worded it like that's damn. I did not see that coming out of Weiss. So the whole thing with, a lack of dialogue with Weiss kind of translated into her actions. And, you notice that in volumes 11 and 12, Weiss was being more apart from the entire group. So like I said, I won't be surprised if Weiss stays behind and wherever she is off to, and it's not going to sit well with RWBY and company. So, with Emerald switching sides, I saw it coming. I just didn't expect it to be the way I did see it. Now, with the semblance evolving, we start seeing it with Ren. Now, we might be seeing it with Jean as well, because you notice that his hands were turning gold. Because you remember in Volume 5, it's more like a silvery / white. So, we're looking at the hands, it's like, it's changing colors, so it's like, are we seeing an evolution to Jean's semblance? Now, the whole thing with the chat with Yang and RWBY about Summer, I'm like, we probably figured out what happened to Summer, but where's the proof? Now, the overall decision making by Winter, I'm like, again, this is something I saw coming since Chapter 1 of Volume 8, but it's like, yeah. Now, with Cinder, being lying about certain things, it's like, it's going to catch up to her in time. Now, the spirit behind the lamp relic outing the other one, it's like, it's probably going to get interesting between the remaining spirits in time. Now, one thing I'm going to say here, during the fight between Yang and Salem, it's like, okay, I was not expecting to see it, but in a way I was. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if we have a potential return of Raven Branwyn. Because if we do, we may have a little bit more information on what's to come in Volume 9. Because you have to remember the post-credit scene in Volume 5, somebody is making Tai Yang a visit, and now we have a better idea of the nature of that visit. It could be Raven, it could still be Crow, because we have to remember, in the end of Volume 8, we do see Ro turning into a bird. Now, we do know that Tai Yang is paid a visit by either Raven or Crow. Now, the nature of it is a bit more clear. RWBY and Yang are missing and or dead in the eyes of some. And like I said, I worded it on purpose, so don't twist it. And the reason why, because here's the thing. With RWBY and Yang, some people are going to say they're dead, alongside Weiss, Blake, and Jean. So we do know that they're supposedly dead. However, they're not. So that's a little clarification of how I worded it. Because the missing part, we do know they're missing. That's canon. But some people are going to say they're dead. So that's a full-blown explanation. So, like I said, we know the whole gist of the nature of the visit with Tai Yang and Patch. Yang and RWBY are quote-unquote dead, sense of like they fell somewhere. Now, to them, to Tai Yang, to all of them, they're dead. However, we do know that they're alive, but they're in somewhere else. So that's that on that. Now, what are my overall thoughts here? So I know this is a really long video. So let me go into certain things. There we go. Now, what do I think about the volume as a whole? Now, the extended break, because there was one, as well as an emergency break. Now, here is my take on that. Now, it was a good idea to have an extended break to give people more time, to really polish certain things, but it brought out the worst in the fandom, as it always has been. And it's like, for those who are silencing others who have valid criticisms of the show, it makes the fandom look really, really bad. Now, the intentions behind the breaks, those were really good intentions, but it's like, it seems to always bring out the worst in the fandom. And it's something that has to change in order for RWBY as well as the fandom to survive. Because without changes, it's going to be more of the same. Now, pertaining to the fandom itself, it's like, when it comes down to airing out dirty laundry, don't do it. Because it's like you're going to make everything look worse than it seems. Or already is. Alternatively. Now, the writing, it is quite questionable in some areas, in my personal opinion. Because it's like you have some parts of it where it felt really all over the place. The execution didn't seem to feel natural or right. It's just like, yeah. Now, the writing also needs to be a little bit more consistent. Because it's like, we're seeing parts of Volume 6 all over again. And that is bad. Now, the whole thing with Winter, the way she got the Winter Maiden powers, I'm like, I have to give the salutations to Penny, because Penny made the right decision in Volume 7 by going after it to buy time, to ensure that Cinder would never get it. Now, the animation was really, really good. I'm like, wow. Now, so some of the interactions are questionable. Now, the queer baiting thing, with their reunion scene in Chapter 10, I will say this. It is not queer baiting, but I feel it's going to be a reason why Team RWBY splits up again. That's all I have to say on that. Now, I'm going to go into the scores here. Like I said, I do have two scores. The intended fan score and my personal score. Now, my personal score, I had to factor a lot of it into what I have. So, for 8A, it is a 10 out of 10 for the intended fan score. For my personal score, I'm going to give this a 7.5 out of 10. Blah. Not 7.5 out of 10, an 8.5 out of 10 for 8A. Now, the reason why I'm giving 8.5 out of 10 is just like, hold on a second. That was not intentional, folks. that was my K, Sandy is demanding attention, so I don't know if you can see him. Yeah, he is demanding attention, so he kind of bumped into my phone, so that sort of thing. So you guys get to see that live. But anyway, so it is an 8.5 out of 10 for my personal score. Now, the only reason why I'm giving it this score is because it has to be 100% flawless in every sense of the term in order for me to give it a 10 out of 10 for a personal score. Now, the only reason why I'm taking points away is the fandom. Now, 8B, this is where I am a little bit more strict on the matter. Now, the intended fan score, again, is a 10 out of 10 for 8B. But for 8B, my personal score is going to be a 6.5 out of 10. Now, the fandom is a pretty big factor into the personal score for 8B. But the writing and the overall execution of the plots, again, the writing, not the animation, it are the bigger factors. It is just too big for me to ignore. Because we have the fandom, being as bad as it could be when it's not airing on Twitter. And by airing on the Rooster Teeth website and all the really bad interaction on Twitter, it's just like, this is the reason why it is as split as it is. Now, for Volume 8 overall, the intended audience score, it is a 10 out of 10. I'm going to be giving Volume 8 overall sadly a 6.5 out of 10. Now, again, the whole thing with 8B, the reason why 8B got a 6.5 out of 10 as well as Volume 8 overall is a 6.5 out of 10 is, again, 8B just kind of ruined it. And you have people on Twitter, well, some of you who have noticed it can tell what's exactly going on. You just don't air out dirty laundry like that And it creates such a division like that. It's just like, come on. If you have a beef with somebody, settle it in private. Because I don't want to be hearing about what's going on between this person and that person. Because it makes me not want to be part of the fandom at all. So the fandom is it's just like how like toxic it can be. That is a very big factor. Now the writing is another equally big factor. It's just like, you did so good at 8A, but why you fall apart 8B? Now another thing here is just say, you know, some of the decision making by the shows is like, yeah, that sort of thing. But to do a quick recap, 8B kind of ruined it for the volume. And the fandom is not making things any better. So I do hope that in Volume 9, some of the writing gets fixed fast. Because if you still have people leaving the show since Volume 4, RWBY's not going to survive much longer. And that's just my personal opinion on the matter. For my final thoughts on the show itself, RWBY can use a lot of changes in sense of the writing, you know. Consistency, executing certain parts of the writing better. And maybe having a fandom that is more civil. Meaning that you can disagree on certain things. You can disagree on opinion on certain things. As long as you're willing to have a conversation about it in a civil manner. That's what matters the most. And that's what the fandom needs to do. So with that, I'm done with this video. With Wolvie here, signing off. I will catch you all on the flip side.